Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something uh, pretty exhilarating. We're talking radical self-acceptance, high fashion, and social justice, all through the eyes of a true drag icon.
We're getting into Release the Beast, a drag queen's guide to life by Bimini Bamboo Lash.
And the source material it's just remarkable. It's framed as an anti-self-help book, which I think is the perfect way to put it.
It really is. It uses drag as a lens to deliver this really powerful guide to nonconformity. So our mission today is to kind of extract these 10 transformative life lessons, really focusing on how they can help you live outside society's, very restrictive definitions of what's normal.
And you just have to acknowledge the range here. I mean,
Right.
This is the queen who gave us these sublime architectural looks, but also looks inspired by, and this is a quote, a shitty Norwich City football player in a suit covered in acne.
Right.
You know you're in for a ride when that's the starting point.
But that's the whole point, isn't it? That rebellion. The core promise here is about empowerment. It's about celebrating nonconformity, giving you the confidence to flip convention on its head.
And it feels like it's for anyone who's ever felt like they just don't fit in.
Exactly. Or for anyone struggling with their identity. And, the spark for the book was so personal. It wasn't some grand plan. It came from this lighthearted, totally unscripted on-air chat with Ginny Lemon about gender.
I remember that moment. It was huge.
It was a cultural moment, and it worked because it was authentic. It just shattered all these misconceptions about being non-binary without getting into a hostile debate. And Bimini realized just by telling your story openly, you can inspire people.
So we're going to use this manifesto to guide us through, what, 3 big themes?
That's right. We're looking at the transformative power of femininity, the absolute necessity of being a system offender, and finally, the vital importance of knowing your history.
Okay, so let's start with that first one. Embrace the femme. The sources make it so clear that for Bimini, drag was never just about the makeup and the wigs.
No, not at all. It was, and I'm quoting here, an empowering gateway into the exploration of my own gender identity. It just unlocked this confidence that wasn't there before.
And those roots go way back to their childhood.
Oh, completely. They talk about growing up in a world where women, their mother, their grandmother, their babysitter, were the starring roles. The mother especially was this incredibly independent woman who just worked tirelessly, often doing it all in a heel.
So femininity from the very beginning was defined as powerful.
Exactly. Glam, gorgeous, go-getting, not fragile, powerful.
Which brings us to one of my favorite parts of this whole thing.
Yeah.
The bimbo persona on Drag Race UK, the Trojan horse.
Yes, so brilliant. They show up in that hot pink faux leather dominatrix outfit.
With vegan bee studded on the front. I mean, iconic.
Just iconic. And the whole point was to lean into that bimbo stereotype so that the other competitors and the viewers would just underestimate me.
It's such a genius move because it completely subverts the word itself. Most people don't know the history of bimbo, do they?
No, and it's fascinating. It actually comes from the Italian bambino, a male baby. It was first used to describe foolish men.
No way.
Yeah, it only shifted to mean women in the second half of the 20th century, which, says a lot about misogyny.
And this whole strategy of playing dumb to gain power, it has a long history.
A very long history. The source points to people like Marilyn Monroe, but the best example has to be Dolly Parton.
Oh, for sure.
Way back in 1977, she told Barbara Walters that, yeah, people think the persona is a joke, but actually the joke was on the public because I know exactly what I'm doing. It's taking control of the male gaze.
And we're seeing that happen all over again on platforms like TikTok now.
We are. Bimini talks about creators who are embracing the look, the bimbo aesthetic, but they're pairing it with these really radical politics.
Right. There's that quote.
Yes. The bimbo is pro-choice, pro-sex work, pro-Black Lives Matter, and he or they, likes to look pretty. It's completely flipping the script.
You see that script flipping in the fashion, too. I mean, we have to talk about the Norwich City Football Club look.
We have to. It's a masterpiece of confusion. You've got this hyper-masculine football hooligan thing going on, but then it's a high-rise leotard and 10-inch thigh highs.
It's amazing.
And the brilliance is in that confusion. It proves Bimini's point that femininity is always seen as a weakness, especially when a boy adopts it. Society just sees it as less than masculinity.
And the drag scene itself is pushing those boundaries even further now.
Absolutely. The source points to Gottmik from Drag Race, who is a trans man, but as a drag queen, he's exploring the entire spectrum of femininity and androgyny. And that, in Bimini's words, is crushing the system in a truly punk rock way.
So if drag's about flipping the script, Then the next step is to become a system offender. But okay, to really get that, we need to be clear on what system we're even talking about. Let's break down some of the core terms here.
Yeah, that's fundamental. And it really starts with the difference between sex and gender, because that gets so muddled in public discussions.
Right.
So sex is what's assigned at birth. It's based on physical stuff. But gender is this set of socially constructed ideas. It's about how you feel, how you see yourself.
And then you have all these other terms around identity,
Hmm.
because drag is an art form, but identity is something else entirely.
Exactly. Drag is performance. But trans, for instance, is an umbrella term for anyone whose gender identity is different from the sex they were assigned. And then you have non-binary, which is this huge, beautiful spectrum of people who don't fit into the simple male-female boxes.
And gender nonconforming.
That's more about expression, playing with gender in a way that society, finds unusual. And Bimini argues that the old confusion, where the public just saw a drag queen as a man in a wig, was actually really politically damaging.
Because that confusion is what fused the system they are trying to offend.
Precisely. And Bimini even calls out misogyny inside some drag scenes, places that wouldn't welcome women or non-binary performers. It shows that the resistance isn't just external.
It's all rooted in these ancient stereotypes.
Hmm.
Masculinity is strength, leadership. Femininity is nurturing, sensitive.
And the second you try to flip them, the social conditioning just kicks right in.
Oh yeah, I'm immediately thinking of that Nicki Minaj quote.
It's the perfect example. She said, "When a man is assertive, he's called a boss. When I'm assertive, I'm called a bee.
Exactly.
A strong woman is a threat. But a sensitive man, he's seen as weak. We're okay with men crying over football. That's passion. But in real life, it's just man up."
And the crazy thing is, as the material points out, these rigid roles are a pretty new Western invention.
They really are. High heels were for Persian cavalrymen. Little kids of all genders wore white dresses for centuries. Our current binary is heavily policed.
And Bimini has a clear idea of who the police are.
Oh yeah, toxic media. Controlled by an elite group of powerful men who control the narrative with moral panics. They point to how celebrity culture vilified women like Britney Spears or Amy Winehouse, while cishet men always got an easier comeback.
And that entire structure is what Bimini calls the patriarchy.
Yes. And for them, it's not just misogyny. It's a whole system engineered by an elite for their own benefit, and it's kept alive by religion and media that manipulate us into believing in this rigid gender binary.
So the fight has to be inclusive.
It has to be. And this is where they get into a really important, sometimes controversial debate. They directly criticize gender-critical views that might suggest trans people shouldn't transition, as a way to challenge gender roles from within.
What's Bimini's take on that?
It's just deeply humane. They basically say a trans person living a happier, more fulfilled life is way more important than them having to perform some kind of ideological role to fight a system that wants them to be miserable in the first place.
So it's about prioritizing personal liberation.
It is. It reminds me of the Judith Butler quote they use, that it is always brave to insist on undergoing transformations that feel necessary and right. The system can only be beaten if the fight is united.
And that unity means looking inward, too.
So important. Bimini tells the story about a Black friend who challenged their kind of naive view of Great Britain after Brexit, and it just widened my horizons to a bigger problem beyond my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
They realized you can't fight the patriarchy without also fighting racism and colonialism. True allyship starts right there.
That idea leads perfectly into the next lesson, which is know your history. The media loves to frame non-binary identity as some kind of new trend.
A fad, yeah. But the source material is clear. It is incredibly old school.
Oh, it's ancient.
It is. People often point to Kate Bornstein's book Gender Outlaw from '94 as a starting point for the modern understanding, but this knowledge has been actively hidden. It's like that George Orwell quote. The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history.
And history shows that our strict gender binary is basically a Western European idea that was forced on the rest of the world through colonialism.
Exactly. The examples are devastating. In India, you have the hijra, a third gender role, that was criminalized by British laws. In North America, indigenous traditions of gender fluidity, like the two-spirit identity, were violently suppressed. What we live with now is a colonial legacy.
And the most famous modern moment of resistance against that legacy has to be Stonewall.
It is, but Bimini makes sure we remember who was really on the front lines fighting the police.
It's a detail that can't be forgotten.
Never. The front lines were disproportionately drag queens, gender nonconforming people, or trans women of color. People like Sylvia Rivera, Marsha P. Johnson, Stormy DeLarvery.
And the tragedy is, even after that incredible act of resistance, the community infighting continued.
It did. Marcia and Sylvia were apparently told not to come to the very first Pride Parade in 1970 because, and this is just awful, white gays thought it would be bad for the community's image.
Wow. The struggle for inclusion has always been part of the movement's own story.
It has. And that leads right to the next lesson. Where are the B? The fight for survival is directly linked to the need for safe queer spaces. Bimini talks about the London queer scene, parties like Sink the Pink, where they could experiment, and about finding a chosen family.
Something that's shown so beautifully in the film Paris is Burning.
Exactly. These places are lifelines, especially if you grew up feeling isolated, but the fight to keep them is relentless. 50% of London's queer venues have closed since 2010.
That's staggering.
It is. The author is right when they say these spaces are as culturally important as museums and parks.
And they have to be safe spaces, which brings up another difficult topic.
Yeah, the source is very honest about the high levels of substance abuse in the community. People who are unsure of their identity are 5 times more likely to struggle with these issues. So the call for more sober, safe spaces, like the London LGBTQ+ Community Center, is absolutely vital.
Okay, let's pivot to the final set of lessons, starting with the outward expression, fashion. Lesson 5. Suffer for fashion. It's not just about clothes.
No, it's armor, it's provocation, it's a statement. For the author, it was this whole journey from wearing boring tracksuits to try and fit in to realizing they could customize their entire aesthetic, especially with their creative partner, the designer Ella Lynch.
And the looks are just incredible, the stoned on the runway look.
Yes, using stones to look like acne or boils on a skin tone suit with this greasy wig. The goal was to be gross but extremely editorial. Or the prehistoric look, where instead of bones and fur, they became the first life form, like a single cell. So architectural.
A greasy Shirley Carter wig. I mean, that's just genius in how horrifying it is.
Right. It's that punk rock thing again. It's making you question what beauty even is.
And that embrace of the unconventional, it connects so perfectly to the next lesson. Have a positive mental attitude. PMA.
It became a meme, didn't it? But it's tied to this really deep philosophical idea called the queer art of failure.
That's a fascinating phrase. What does that mean?
Well, it starts by recognizing that our idea of success is usually seen through this very rigid capitalist and heteronormative lens.
Right. Marriage, kids, promotions.
Exactly. Queer people often feel like they're failing at those things, failing at being a man or a woman, failing at society's expectations. So a theorist named Jack Halberstam suggests that failure is actually a care part of the queer experience. It's a way to live your life around the usual markers of accomplishment. You succeed by changing the rules of the game.
So you define success in, as Bimini would say, non-binary terms. You stop comparing yourself to the Kardashians.
You do. And Bimini points to Dolly Parton again. Her use of wealth, Dollywood, funding libraries, that's true PMA. It's about supporting your community while being fabulous. The goal is liberation, not just getting rich.
And that liberation brings us to the final lesson, which is all about radical self-love. Release the beast.
And it's so important to remember where this idea of self-care comes from. It's traced back to Black feminists like Audre Lorde, who said, caring for myself is an act of political warfare. It's self-preservation in a world that wants to grind you down.
The source is so unflinching about how hostile that world can be. The section detailing the experience with GHB or G is, it's just harrowing.
It really is. The substance that gave euphoria but led to illness, paranoia, crippling anxiety. And the fact that it's so normalized in parts of the queer scene makes that struggle even more intense.
And the decision to stop was triggered by an out-of-body experience.
Yeah, a realization that that path just wasn't sustainable. It really highlights the immense self-work it takes to escape something destructive when you're just looking for connection in a world that, as Bimini says, is not designed for us to thrive in.
So the self-care that comes after that isn't about bath bombs, it's survival.
It's pure survival. And the practical steps are so simple. Set tiny, achievable goals, like just brushing your teeth is a win. Exercise is the best addiction. Clearing your space, meditation. And they also stress that coming out isn't this one single thing you have to do.
No, it's a constant process.
It's constant. Queer and trans people have to come out constantly. It's a lifelong, fluid journey.
So at the end of the day, this whole manifesto kind of boils down to a very simple idea.
It does. It wraps up with a total commitment to kindness. Kindness to yourself and kindness to others. They use a quote from Kate Bornstein to sum it all up. Do whatever it takes to make your life more worth living. Just don't be mean.
And what a journey. From embracing the femme as a weapon, to understanding the politics of identity, to fighting the patriarchy.
It all shows that gender is political, it's fluid, and that drag gives you the tools to resist. The only way forward is through listening, tolerance, and uniting against those external systems of oppression with self-love as your foundation.
And as we close out this deep dive, just remember that the goal isn't perfection, it's liberation. And that means constantly challenging those nonsensical norms and binaries that have been pushed on all of us. So, if gender is a performance learned through repetition, we want to leave you with a final, provocative question. What small, unconventional performance could you intentionally adopt this week through fashion, movement, or expression to challenge your own internalized gender norms? Go put on the wrong shoes, wear a color you think you're not allowed to, or maybe just refuse to take yourself too seriously.